Mr. Belvedere ran 6 seasons, and 3 of the people in this story are gone. One died at home from complications of diabetes. Another was taken by pancreatic cancer at 57. A third kept working until 90 with cancer in his lungs and a microphone still in his hand. Number 1. The butler himself, and almost nothing about him was what the audience assumed. Christopher Hyo, it was 62 when the show premiered on the 15th of March, 1985. He played Lynn Aloysius Belvedere in all 117 episodes, and he closed almost every one of them the same way, sitting alone at a desk, writing the day into a journal in a voice that made a suburban Friday sound like history. That voice never rose. There was no need. A house full of shouting Americans went quiet the second he walked into frame, and the joke was never that the butler was fussy. The joke was that the butler was right. Bob Uecker explained the casting later. It got the part because he was tall enough and grave enough that a grown man might plausibly do as he was told. Here is what America did not know it was watching. Hewett was born in Worthing, in Sussex, on the 5th of April 1922 to an army officer descended from the Irish leader Daniel O'Connell and an actress who worked under the name Rhoda Clay-Tunn. He walked onto a stage in Dublin at 7, in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and he never really got off one again. At 16, he joined the Royal Air Force, 16 years old. He was in uniform as the Second World War began, and he left the service in 1940. The Oxford Repertory Company took him next. He made his West End debut in 1943, and in 1954 he crossed the Atlantic for good. 2 years after that, he was standing on a Broadway stage in the original company of My Fair Lady, playing the rival phonetician Zoltan Karpathy and understudying Rex Harrison as Henry Higgins. That show opened on the 15th of March, 1956. Mr. Belvedere premiered on the 15th of March, 1985. The same date, 29 years apart, sitting at either end of one man's career. He directed, too. The Broadway Review from A to Z in 1960, an off-Broadway revival of the Rodgers and Hart musical by Jupiter, and a production of Camelot. He played Roger Debris in Mel Brooks's film The Producers, and Captain Hook opposite Sandy Duncan's Peter Pan. Butler was the fourth act of that life, not the first. Authority was not something he acted either. Ilene Graff remembered that on the first day of taping, Hewett announced there would be no gum chewing, and that with his size and his voice, nobody dreamed of contradicting him. He never married, and he had no children. A devout Catholic, he served at St. Victor's Church in West Hollywood, and that is very nearly the whole public record of his private life. He kept it that way on purpose. Arthritis and diabetes shadowed his last years. On the 3rd of August, 2001, at his home in Los Angeles, complications of diabetes killed him. He was 79. His memorial was held at St. Victor's, the parish where he had served. Then he was taken home. Christopher Hyo. It lies buried at Brookwood Cemetery in Surrey, England, in the country he had walked away from 47 years earlier. Lynn Belvedere was a man who arrived from England to fix an American family. Christopher Hyo. It was a man who arrived from England, fixed nothing in particular, worked on stages for more than 50 years, and quietly went back. Second on this list is the woman who played the mother, and she was a Broadway leading lady long before she was anybody's television wife. Ilene Graff was 36 when she became Marcia Cameron Owens, and Marcia was a strange creature for a sitcom of that decade. She was in law school when the audience met her. The degree arrived during the run. Then she went to work as a lawyer while 3 children and a butler carried on around her, and Graff played her warm without ever playing her soft. Born in Brooklyn on the 28th of February 1949, she was the daughter of a musician and a piano teacher. Music was the family trade and it stuck. She went to Ithaca College, then to Broadway, and she stayed there for years. Fran Kuu Bulik in Promises Promises. 2.5 years playing Sandy in Grease. She created the role of Cleo in I Love My Wife and sang it on the original cast album. By the time television found her, she had already had a whole career. While she was doing Grease, she met a composer named Ben Lanzu Aroni, and they married in the late 1970s. He was a classical pianist who had debuted at Carnegie Hall, the music director of the original Broadway production of Grease, and a man who toured with Frank Sinatra. Then he wrote music for Mr. Belvedere. For 4 of its 6 seasons, the man scoring the show was married to the woman starring in it. They had one daughter, Niku Graff Lanzu Rohni, born in Los Angeles on the 20th of November 1983. Niku went to the Boston Conservatory and into the family business at the highest level. She made her Broadway debut in Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and she later played Velma Kelly in Chicago. Today she lives and works in New York, married to a man named Daniel Smith. That marriage of Ilene and Ben lasted about 46 years. It ended on the 16th of February 2024 when Ben Lanzu Rotny died of lung cancer in Los Angeles at the age of 85. Their daughter announced it the following day. Her father, she said, would always be a titan, and losing him was incalculable. Ilene Graff is 77 years old today, and she is still singing. She teaches a musical theater workshop she calls Making the Song Your Own. She performs cabaret at 54 Below and Birdland in New York, and she sings in concerts that raise money for the Entertainment Community Fund. Marsha Owens was the mother who went back to school. Ilene Graff was the Broadway singer who went back to the stage the moment the cameras stopped, and she is still on it. Third, and here the show stops being fiction, because the man playing a sportscaster was one of the finest sportscasters America ever produced. Robert George Uecker was born in Milwaukee on the 26th of January 1934, the son of a Swiss immigrant named Gus. He enlisted in the United States Army in 1954 and rose to corporal, playing service baseball at Fort Leonard Wood and at Fort Belvedere in Virginia, alongside a future major leaguer named Dick Grote. Then he signed with his hometown Milwaukee Braves and became, by his own cheerful account, one of the worst hitters in the history of the sport. His career batting average was exactly 200. He won a World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964, mostly from the bench, and he dined out on all of it for the rest of his life. Radio was where he became somebody. From 1971, he called Milwaukee Brewers games, and he kept calling them for 54 seasons. Johnny Carson had him on The Tonight Show roughly 100 times and christened him Mr. Baseball. A Miller Lite commercial in which he insisted he must be in the front row and turned out to be up under the roof is why the worst seats in the Brewers ballpark are still called the Uecker seats. Mr. Belvedere arrived in the middle of all that, and baseball bent to make room for it. The Brewers owner Bud Selig let Uecker miss roughly 14 games a season to shoot the show, and when the Brewers played Anaheim, he took a helicopter from the studio to the stadium. In 2003, the Baseball Hall of Fame gave him the Ford C. Frick Award. His private life carried real weight. He and his first wife Joyce had 4 children. Joyce died in 2015. Their son Steve, who grew up to be a cowboy, died in 2012 of complications of San Joaquin Valley fever. A daughter, Lee Ann, died of ALS in March 2022. He buried 2 of his 4 children and went back on the air both times. His other 2, Sue Ann and Bob Jr., have stayed out of public life. He married his second wife Judy in Louisiana in 1976, and they settled in Mid-nineteen-eighties Falls, outside Milwaukee. In 2010, he had his aortic valve replaced and needed a second heart operation the same year, and he was back in the booth by July. Then, in 2023, he was diagnosed with small cell lung cancer, and he told almost nobody. He called Brewers games through the 2024 season with that diagnosis in his chest. On the 16th of January 2025, he died at his Mid-nineteen-eighties Falls home, 10 days short of his 91st birthday. George Owens was a father outranked in his own kitchen. Bob Uecker was a man who spent 60 years telling the world he was no good at baseball and got into the Hall of Fame anyway. Something you should know before we go on. The little boy who declared war on that butler in episode 1 is 50 years old now, and he has spent 30 years making sure you know nothing about him. Number 4. Wesley T. Owens, the smallest and most dangerous person in the house. Brice Beckham was 8 when he was cast, and 9 when the show premiered, and he appeared in all 117 episodes. Wesley was the engine of the series, a small, relentless, deeply unimpressed boy who never signed a peace treaty with anyone, and who kept up a running blood feud with the next-door neighbors the audience never once saw. A 9-year-old had to carry the central relationship of a network sitcom opposite a 62-year-old classically trained stage actor, week after week, for 6 years, and hold his own. Bob Uecker said Beckham was a great kid who was smart and who knew everybody else's lines as well as his own. James Brice Beckham was born in Long Beach, California on the 11th of February 1976, and he never left the state. School plays led to radio commercials. Those led to an episode of the sitcom Alice, and that led to the audition that changed everything. Then, something unusual happened. He stopped. There were a few more parts after Mr. Belvedere ended. An episode of The Wonder Years, a walk-on in Roseanne, and then nothing at all for 8 years. Rather than chase the next role, he finished high school, took first place in the California High School Speech State Finals in 1993, and enrolled at the University of Southern California to study theater properly. He returned to the industry in 2001, and mostly he returned behind the camera. With David Fickus, a friend from the USC School of Theater, he built a production company. The two of them created the VH1 comedy I Hate My 30s in 2007, and Beckham starred in all 8 episodes. He voiced characters in the animated film Sharkbait and in the video game LANWAR, and he has made music videos, including official ones for Eric Clapton. Los Angeles is home, and he belongs to a theater group there called NAH Muste. About his own life, he says nothing. No wife appears on the public record, no children, no interviews about his private world. For a face millions would recognize instantly, that silence is an achievement, and it deserves reporting honestly rather than filling in with guesswork. Wesley Owens could not keep his mouth shut about anything. Brice Beckham has kept his shut about everything that matters to him for 30 years, and he is 50 years old and working steadily. If these are the people whose faces you grew up with, subscribing takes a second, and it means the next one of these lands in front of you. Fifth is the eldest brother, and he did the strangest thing on this entire list. He started his second career before the first one had finished. Rob Stone was 22 when Mr. Belvedere premiered, and 27 when it ended. And Kevin Owens grew up across those 6 years the way a real person does. High school senior, college student, young man with his own apartment. The writers handed Stone the heavy episodes because he could take them. Andrew Gree Lee, writing in the New York Times in 1987, called his work in one episode very sensitive and said the scenes were among the most touching and skillful he had ever seen on television. He was born in Dallas on the 22nd of September, 1962, the son of Dr. Marvin Stone, the chief of oncology at a Dallas cancer center. Acting started for him at 13 at the Dallas Theater Center, and he left Texas in 1982 for the drama school at the University of Southern California. Now here is the part that gives the whole thing its shape. In 1986, aged 23, in the middle of a hit sitcom, Stone founded a documentary company called Vienna Productions. Its first film arrived in 1990, the year Mr. Belvedere ended. It was a short about homelessness called The Sidewalk Motel, and the actor he cast in it was Christopher Hewett. Bruce Springsteen recorded a Woody Guthrie song for it. Acting stopped for him after Matlock in 1993. Directing did not. A 2-hour Blue Angels documentary hosted by Dennis Quaid, which won a Cable Ace Award. Thunder Over the Pacific, hosted by Candice Bergen. Into the Wild Blue, hosted by Tom Skerritt. In 1998, he made One Vision, a documentary about directing built out of interviews with Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Zemeckis, and Ron Howard. He married Melissa Chan in 1998, and they are married still. Today he is 63. Bob Uecker said the two of them still spoke now and then, and that Stone was busy making shows for the Discovery Channel and the History Channel. Kevin Owens was the eldest child, the one who moved out across 6 seasons. Rob Stone was the young man who hired his television father for his first film as a director, and then spent 30 years pointing a camera at fighter pilots. Number 6 is the one that hurts. He had 7 scenes on this show. Today, he is the most famous face in the entire cast. Carl was Kevin's best friend, the one who turned up with a bad idea and a completely straight face and talked him into it. He appeared roughly 7 times between 1986 and 1989, and he was billed somewhere near the bottom. The actor was Willie Garson. Born William Garson, Pazamont, in Highland Park, New Jersey, on the 20th of February 1964, he took a degree in theater from Wesleyan University and then a master's degree from the Yale School of Drama. A Yale-trained actor doing 3 lines on a Friday night sitcom. That was the shape of his first 15 years, and he never once complained about it. Over 75 films, more than 300 episodes of television, then Stanford Blatch on Sex and the City and Mozzie on White Collar, and a career that finally matched the training. The story that matters most, though, is not on any call sheet. Garson wanted to be a father, and he went to the Los Angeles child welfare system to become one. Years later, he described the moment he first saw the boy who would become his son. He was like a light that was shining brightly, Garson said. That boy was the only one playing and laughing, and Garson knew at once that this was his kid. The child was 7. He moved in during 2009, and the adoption was finalized in January 2010. Garson chose an older child on purpose, saying he would not serve a baby well. He was 57 when pancreatic cancer killed him at his home in Los Angeles on the 21st of September 2021. His son, Nai Thun, was 20. Nai Thun wrote him a public goodbye that began with 5 words. "I love you so much, Papa." Willie Garson is buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills, and his son now sits on the board of an organization that finds permanent families for older children in care. Carl was a boy with a bad plan. Willie Garson was a man who went looking for the child nobody else was picking and found him. Which of these people surprised you most? Tell me in the comments, because I did not expect the answer to be the one with 7 scenes. 7th, the daughter of the house and the quietest exit in this whole story. Tracy Wells had turned 14 2 days before the premiere. Heather Owens was the only girl in a house of loud men, and Wells refused to play her as the brittle, eye-rolling teenager the decade usually handed to girls that age. She played her like somebody's actual sister. The industry noticed at once. She won the Young Artist Award for the Best Young Actress starring in a new television series, which was, in effect, a formal announcement that she was going to be a star. Born Tracy Ann Brock Stein in Encino, California, on the 13th of March 1971, she got her first primetime job on Silver Spoons. Then came 6 years as Heather, a guest spot on Growing Pains, a couple of films, and then, at 23, she simply stopped acting and never came back. Her private life is genuinely private. Various pages online repeat an account of her marriages and her children, and none of it carries a single source, so this video will not repeat it as fact. What can be verified is smaller and, honestly, nicer. She goes by Tracy Tofty now. At 55, she sells houses in Brentwood, a few miles from the valley where she was born, and Bob Uecker mentioned years afterwards that he still saw her. Heather Owens spent 6 years being watched by millions of people. Tracy Wells has spent the last 30 years being watched by nobody at all, which appears to be exactly how she wanted it. 8th and last, The Best Friend, and a family history nobody watching the show could possibly have guessed. Angela was the girl who could never get the butler's name right, and Michele Matheson played the joke absolutely straight. She was not winking at the audience. Angela genuinely believed she had said it correctly. The same gag ran for roughly 25 episodes across 5 seasons, and it never died once. Born on the 14th of August, 1971 in Los Angeles County, she had 2 actors for parents. Her father was Don Matheson, and her mother was Dee Ann Udlund. They met playing opposite each other on the science fiction series Land of the Giants, and married in 1970 right after it was canceled. Her father, though, had a life before any of that. Don Matheson served 6 years in the military and fought in Korea, where he was awarded the Bronze Star for valorous leadership and the Purple Heart for wounds suffered in an explosion. He came home and joined the Detroit Police Department. Then he left law enforcement to become an actor. A decorated combat veteran turned Detroit officer turned television star, and his daughter was the ditzy friend on a Friday night comedy. Michele stayed in the business for a while. Life Goes On, Kingpin, Melrose Place, an Academy Award-nominated short film called Johnny Flinton. Then she changed profession completely. Tin House Books published her novel Saving Angelfish in 2006, a story loosely drawn from her own life. She turned 55 4 days ago. Both her parents died within 4 years of each other. Don Matheson died of lung cancer in 2014, aged 84. Dee Un-U Lund died of pancreatic cancer at her home in Century City in 2018, aged 81. Angela could not pronounce a single thing correctly. Michele Matheson grew up to write books for a living. 5 of these 8 are alive today. The youngest is 50. In a cemetery in Surrey, England, there is a grave belonging to America's most famous butler.